Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Ingram Jones. I'm with world-class trainer, Uncle James Ali Bashir. Uncle, December the 12th, we know Usyk's fighting, but on the same night, Anthony Joshua meets his rival, Dillian Wyhte. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a good fight. I think it's a really good fight, my hat's off to both of those guys for taking this kind of fight at this point in their careers. I think it's rather early by today's standards, but not so early by yesterday's standards.
Okay.
So I applaud both of those guys because they're going to make a great contribution to the sport of boxing. And boxing needs a shot in the arm like the one that these guys are about to give them.
Okay. What do you think of Dillian's idea of, well, you know what, if I take you around the back, I'll beat you up. You know, I could do you in a fist fight. Does that mean anything in the squared circle?
In my mind, it means nothing. It's part of a psychological ploy on Dillian's behalf, and who's to knock him for saying that? You know, and perhaps he believes that could be there. I don't know. Whether he believes it or not, but it's a good psychological ploy. Whatever makes the guy tick, I say let him do it. As long as he don't commit an armed robbery, he's all right.
What are the key victories to this for both? What are the key points for each fighter? The keys to victory, as they'd say.
I don't want to say what the keys to victory is for either guy because they're about to fight, and what I say here can be conveyed to each one of them and actually against the other. So I'd rather just stay out of that, because I'm so close to them.
Of course, yeah.
Close to both of those guys. So I respect those guys. I respect them a lot. I respect both guys a lot, It's this thing that they have for each other, and they just need to get it done, So I'll stay out of it.
Let's turn it around slightly then. I shouldn't really should ask that question. What does this fight remind you of in your experience of boxing?
So there's so many fights like that. Kenny Norton and Larry Holmes. Kenny Norton and Larry Holmes, Ali Fraser, and it goes on and on and on and on. James Quick Tillis and Mike Weaver. It's just two guys that got it in for each other, and they got to get in the ring and settle it.
Joshua seems the fighter that has had, well, not seen, he's been the consistent fighter. He seems to have the more professional setup from the start. That's what it seems like. And Dillian Wyhte seems to be getting it together now with Jonathan Banks. There are question marks. I mean, how good is a trainer Jonathan Banks? How good is a trainer is Joshua's trainer? Question marks as to, well, okay, if Joshua beats Wyhte or Wyhte beats Joshua, what exactly are they beating? Because neither of them have beaten anybody of real note. So,
I think it's a good fight. I think it's a good fight from a chemistry standpoint.
Yes.
A chemistry standpoint. And the people are looking for excitement. And I think this is a great injection into boxing and into the heavyweight division.
Right.
Because you could say like champions of tomorrow.
Right.
These guys are rolling the dice, and you got to respect that. Because guys now try to stay safe for 30 fights, 40 fights before they fight. But Dylan and Anthony, they're going for it right now, right from the rip. And I like that about both of them.
Can you explain to, not so much myself, but to boxing public, the difference in levels between somebody who's fighting for a British title and then somebody who's just beaten the universally recognised heavyweight champion of the world? The difference in levels. Can you explain that and break that down? Because people are saying Joshua could get in there tomorrow and beat Klitschko. Joshua could get in there tomorrow and beat Tyson Fury. What? You know, I mean, time and season. Joshua might be able to beat Fury and Klitschko, but it's surely experience and time.
It always depends on the mentality of the individual.
Right.
I mean, you figure George Foreman won the Olympic gold medal with 20 amateur fights. Who does that? You understand? So it depends wholly on the individual, the mentality.
Right.
So the pros and cons is what kind of mentality does this individual have? And then you can measure what he's capable of doing and what he's not capable of doing. I think you got to just go with the flow until somebody proves them wrong.
Right. There's nothing wrong with that.
I always said to see, I said this about Anthony Joshua from the very beginning, and I say it now and again. If Anthony Joshua can take it, if he can take it, if he has the mental resolve to get up when he's been knocked down, to function when his eye is swollen, when he's got a cut lip, blood coming from everywhere, sort of like in the mode of a Matthew Saad Muhammad.
Yes.
You can hit him in the head with a light pole, he's going to fight. If he has the mental resolve to come back, to endure, and still function, and this is a very difficult thing to do. It's easy to do something when you're up, but when you got to come from behind, this is a very, very difficult thing.
Now,
if I'm not finished, if he has that mental resolve, if he can take it and has that mental resolve, I always said that he'd be the second coming of George Foreman, just better and bigger and stronger. You know, he'll be better boxer. He'll be bigger and stronger if he has that mental resolve. If he can take it. And this fight might tell us a whole lot that we don't know about Anthony Joshua. And at the same time, it will tell us a whole lot that we don't know about Dillian Wyhte. I know both guys. I've worked with both guys, and I'm thankful to have had the privilege of working with those guys. And it's going to be exciting to see what they have. I'll be working Usyk's corner here in the Ukraine, but at the same time, my mind is wandering. On that same night, Prince Charles fights Dominic Brazil. Ariola is fighting Kaufman. You know, these guys are fighting. All those fights are happening that same night. Travis Kaufman. Yes. They're going to all fight that night. And my mind is going to be all over the place after I get out of the ring with Usyk. Once we got out of there, I'm headed right to the internet because I want to find out what happened in those fights. Or those fights won't even have been taking place yet. Oh, in England, what time is it? Ukraine time is what? 1 or 2 hours ahead of England?
1 or 2 hours ahead.
Yeah. So they should just be getting in.
Exactly.
But I applaud those guys. I can't say it enough. Dillian Wyhte, Anthony, I applaud them for taking this risk, for going out there and trying to bring back the fans to boxing. And this is a fan-friendly fight.
Now, 2 stories I've heard. There are sparring stories, and, you know, people say there's not much in the sparring. There was one story that I heard that came out the Klitschko camp, that a very senior member of the Klitschko camp said that Vladimir Klitschko was basically beat Joshua up in sparring. Now, the other member, or the other revelation came out only a few days ago from Larry Alubamwe, the War Machine. He was sparring with Dillian Wyhte, and he said that he dropped Dillian Wyhte in sparring with a body shot that didn't seem too hard. And he said, well, it seems to me back then that if you put it on Dillian Wyhte, he doesn't seem to like it. So that's what Wyhte was saying. I mean, not Wyhte. Larry was saying. So does that play any part whatsoever when you hear information like that as a journalist? Should you pay attention to that, or should you say, "Oh, we're just sparring, don't worry about it"? Because I remember when Carl Froch said he knocked George Groves out in sparring. And then we come back and see the fight itself. He knocks him out in sparring. He knocks him out in the fight. So do those things matter or not? Do those things play a part?
I've heard stories about this guy putting it on the champion, that guy putting it on. Everybody has these war stories about what happened in sparring. That's sparring to sparring. And a lot of things happen in sparring to the champion or to the front runner, where they get put down or they get hit with a body shot and get hurt. But that doesn't indicate what's going to go on in a fight. Because when you're in sparring, you're in there, you're working on different things, and sometimes you're vulnerable to get hit in those spots where you get hurt at. And most of the time, when I hear about those war stories, then the guy trying to fight. What was the kid out of Baltimore? Darrell Coley fought Oscar De La Hoya, and he'd be giving Oscar De La Hoya fits in sparring, but when they got in the fight, he got that behind handed to him. De La Hoya handed it behind. So that goes in one ear and out the other about what happens in sparring.
Right.
It goes in one ear and out the other about what happens in sparring. What counts to me is what happens when you go into those big fights. That's where it comes into play. So whatever happened to Dillian in sparring with somebody means nothing to me. Because in sparring, a lot of things happen. That's the nature of the game. What counts is what happens when you go into the big lights. So I don't put much stock in that kind of stuff.
Right, because you listen to these things. Now, it's education as well, because as a journalist, you want to know what to listen to, what to not to listen to. You hear these things and think, okay, so... But then I've heard rumours, and then I've put bets down, not put bets, well, I've said, okay, I've based my predictions based on certain rumours. I remember one rumour that they said that Ofalabi was sparring with the Klitschko's and he had a rock-solid chin. And he was going to fight Enzo Macronelli. I thought, well, you know what? Enzo's not got the greatest chin. And Ofalabi can punch a bit. And he seemed to be able to take a punch. If he can take a punch, he'll be able to stop Macronelli. So I went and put a bet in the fight on Ofalabi. What happens? Ofalabi flattens Macronelli. Because I used what I heard, or he has a good chin, or he's been knocked out in sparring, I heard those things and said, all right, let's put a prediction around that. I can use that. So how much of that is by luck?
Afalabi knocked out Macronelli recently?
He knocked him out a few years ago when Macronelli was trying to make a comeback.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about now with Macronelli and Roy Jones are getting ready to fight.
Yeah, but that was back then. But yeah. So, so I use that as an example and think, well, you know what, if that's happened there, if he's taking Klitschko's punches, or he's been doing well against Klitschko, then I don't think Macronelli's got that sort of power to trouble him. And you saw what happened in the end. So that's where I sort of get that idea. So I'm trying to educate myself more and understand. Do you read? So you say don't read into sparring sessions, but then
it doesn't mean very much. You've got bigger gloves on, first of all.
Okay, but Amir Khan looked terrible. He looked terrible before he fought Danny Garcia. He was getting kicked all over the place. And then when he fought against Garcia, he looked shocking.
You never know what happens. I'm telling you, sparring sessions are one thing. You got big gloves on, headgear on. But when you shave it down to those 8 ounces, those 10 ounces, and you got no headgear on, things change. Things change. You don't take those same kind of risks that you do in sparring. Because you got no protection, you got those 10s and those 8s on, and that's a big difference in the power and the shock of those punches. So you got a whole different fight. It's a whole, you're looking both ways before you cross the street. Because you don't want to run into nothing, So I don't put much stock in it. Dillian Wyhte and Anthony Joshua, I expect a good, short fight.
How many rounds, if you're going to predict?
3. I'm expecting a good. I'm not expecting a boxing match. I'm expecting one or the other to try to take over, and the other one is just not going to happen. One or the other is going to try to impose his will on the other, and the guy that's being imposed upon is not going to have it, and therefore it's going to turn into a fight, a real fight, right from the rip. I don't think there's going to be no feeling on that one. Sort of like Kenny Norton and Larry Holmes.
Did they not like one another?
No, they didn't.
I'll have to go and watch that fight then.
You got to go watch that fight. You got to watch that fight.
Was that the one where Larry Holmes was actually using his left hand and throwing the right hand at and the other guy, and they were just standing right in front of one another?
Yeah.
Ah, I know the fight. I know the fight.
It was fighting. That was a dynamic heavyweight championship fight. That's one of the best fights I ever saw in the heavyweight division in my life. In my life, in my entire life, that was a great fight. And that, even though Dillian and Anthony are not on that level yet, this has the chemistry to make that kind of fight. That kind of mouth-watering fight that the fans were waiting for, where they're going to get it in. These guys are going to get it in. And if I wasn't working with my guy that night, I'd be right in front of my television, or I would have probably been in London. I probably would have been in London. If I didn't have Usyk fighting, or nowhere near a fight, I'd be in London now. I've been in London this whole week. There's no doubt about it. My original plan was to be in London.
I remember you telling me.
You know, I wanted to be there, but, I got this fight. But if I didn't have a fight, I would be there. I wouldn't want to miss this fight.
Wow.
I have great expectations in these guys, I mean, both guys are working really hard. Both of them are game. Both of them want to be there. But I don't think it's going to be a long fight. I think that it's going to end early.
Uncle Bashir, thank you so much for talking to Bayloric TV.
I'm happy to do so, Happy to do so. And hope to hear from you again.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.